video, and on this video I'm going to be ranking the albums by the Beatles. This is a very important video for me, as I am now ranking the albums by perhaps the greatest band of all time, the most influential artists of all time, the band that shaped progressive rock, jazz rock, fusion, experimental, psychedelic, indie, metal. The Beatles are such an important band, so I've taken this quest very seriously. Right, so at number 11 by the Beatles from 1969, I have the album Yellow Submarine. Now, Yellow Submarine, of course, is the soundtrack to their third film. The Beatles occupy a certain space in culture, the same as Elvis Presley, is that they are one of the first bands to come in at the beginning of rock music. The period culturally before that, if you were a star, you made films. And Elvis Presley and the Beatles both made films. The interesting thing about the Beatles films, again, they broke new ground, and I'll be talking about that as we get into it. The third film was like a psychedelic cartoon. It's always been a favourite of mine. I love the DVD. The songs on it are fantastic. But on the whole, what we've got on this album is some older songs that have been released. We've got some new songs, 4 new songs, and we've got a bunch of soundtrack, music that George Martin composed. And it's fantastic stuff. This is a fantastic album. This is the level we start. At number 10, I have got Please Please Me, which is their debut album. One of the most important albums in music history. A legendary album and an incredible album. The music critic, or the Beatles expert, Mark Lewison, later wrote, "There can scarcely have been 585 more productive minutes in the history of recorded music." And this contains classic songs, as well as I Saw Her Standing There, as it's also got Love Me Do On, which I think is their first single. And it's got that incredible backbeat. Love me do. Ringo Starr. Ringo Starr is the session player. Ringo Starr is a mighty drummer. The fact that he plays straight down the line and plays with the song makes him even better in my book. Shall we move on to number 9 on the list? And the number 9 is from 1963, a few months later, is With the Beatles. When you listen to the Beatles start off incredible and then get better at an incredible pace. Now, the big difference between the second album with the Beatles and the first album, Please Please Me, is that Please Please Me has been made in a hurry. They haven't got much money. They spent one day in the studio. They finished the album. They go, "Oh, we need a cover," and they go, "Bring a photographer." And they sort of go out the room and they go up to a balcony and they look down and it gets photographed up, and that's done in 5 minutes. It becomes absolutely classic, of course, this album cover. By the time we get to this second album, we suddenly have this black and white iconic cover. Both of these album covers are incredible, but this one is very iconic. And the quality, aesthetic quality of that album cover, the difference between that and the first, just it happened on a day and it's just magic, is the difference between the first album and the second album. The opener is It Won't Be Long. This is more sophisticated in terms of chord structure and arrangement. All My Loving is the only classic Beatles song on here, however, but the quality is higher. I Want to Hold Your Hand was also from this session, but I don't think it was released on this album. The first George Harrison song appears on here, which is Don't Bother Me. And this is like an ingenious melody. You've got these 2 incredible songwriters, and then on the second album, we've got this other songwriter, George, and he's also incredible. And there's a very quirky melody, and this seems to be pulling from sort of the music that you would have watched in cowboy TV shows. It's not country and western, it's cowboy music that George Harrison obviously watched the TV as a kid in the 1950s, watching Maverick or whatever it was that was around there. I've just made a random name up. I hope that is a TV show that with cowboys in for the 1950s. Probably not. That's what I've got at number 9. So number 8 from 1964, we have The Beatles for Sale. The Beatles for Sale, this also produced the non-album single, I Feel Fine, backed by She's a Woman. So we're seeing them going into the studio, and their best stuff is being held back for singles, because what I think at the time, they wanted to sell the single and then sell the album, and they didn't want people to wait for the album. Single sales were very important, so they would do this a lot. There's a country music influence on this. It suddenly crops in. It's different. It's not just, cheeky rock and roll on this album and little bits of La Bamba and all that type of stuff. What you have on here is a country music influence, and the reason why is because the Bob Dylan album has hit. The only thing that drags this album down for me is there's a lot of covers on it, and the reason why there's a lot of covers is because the Beatles are now, they're in sort of meteoric mode. And Lennon and McCartney just can't quite keep up, it feels, at this time. So, but in a fantastic album, nonetheless. I'm now going to move on to number 7. And now we're jumping right forward to the last album. The last album, Let It Be, from 1970. This is a controversial album, produced by Phil Spector. I don't think they were happy with the production. And it follows the arc from the Beatles being a live band, going through this journey, stopping playing live, then turning the recording studio into the creative process. So in other words, their creativity comes through the studio rather than just being recorded by it. And this changes music. And then you see a gradual move back to them being a band. Let It Be really charts the breakup of the band. And the breakup of the band seems to be coming from bad business decisions and the musicians wanting to do their own thing. The musicians wanting to do their own thing emerges so early on. It's quite surprising. When you listen to the albums in order, you can see there's a number of years where they're sticking together and they love each other and they want to play with each other, but each of them have got their own vision of what they want to do, and it's all an incredible vision. I think this one is them really coming together. I think by the time this album had come out, the band had broken up. Anyway, that's what I've got. Number 7 is Let It Be. At number 6, I have A Hard Day's Night, which is the one that comes out between with the Beatles and the Beatles for Sale, right? This one is a huge leap forward. The songs change. They're not just rock and roll songs. They're not just cheesy little pop songs. There is something else going on. And I think the reason for this is because psychologically, this was the soundtrack to a film. The film's a black and white film made by Richard Lester. The Beatles go into the studio to make tracks that were going to fit in this film. And so I think they start to think filmic. And the fact that they're thinking filmic, if you think what they're about to do, like later on Sgt. Pepper, that is the ingredient. So what we're seeing is the previous era where you had superstars like Elvis Presley that actually became film stars and were in films. What they're going to do is take the idea of the film, the filmic experience that you sit down and experience, and they're going to pull this into the album form, and the albums are going to become the new films for that generation. And the Beatles just go, yeah, done. On to the next one, and the next one on my list is the other soundtrack film, Help, which came out in 1965. We're now in full colour. We get a little bit of psychedelia in, all sorts of things happening. And these soundtrack albums are very, very important. This, coming out in 65, is a rock album. The sort of echoes of rock and roll, rhythm and blues have gone, and it's the influence of country music coming in, I think. 65, Dylan comes out with Like a Rolling Stone. When I listen to Like a Rolling Stone, it sounds like it's 1975. Dylan has completely changed the landscape and created rock music there. And that, you could hear, whether that track's a direct influence or whether it's in the air. But this album is a rock album, and it is much wider in its scope. It contains these masterpieces: Help, You've Got to Hide Your Love Away, which is 6/8, you know, A Ticket to Ride. Yesterday, the most covered and recorded song in history. When you go back to 1960s albums, what you're seeing is that you'll see a photograph of the band or the artwork inside like a little window and then graphics around it. The artwork does not go to the edge. When the artwork starts to go to the edge, this is the moment when the album is born. This happens on the album that I've got at number 6, which is Rubber Soul, which came out a few months later after Help. This is the change. Rubber Soul is an album in itself. The artwork goes to the edge. We've just got the words Rubber Soul. They haven't got the Beatles on. I know this is all visual stuff, but this is important because it shows and explains what the actual change is that happens at this point in time. This contains Norwegian Wood. Norwegian Wood, which is again another Mole track. It's in 6/8. It's got sitar on it. This really is 1965. I think this is where we go. Right, progressive rock is on the way. Right. What have I got next on my list of incredible albums? Right, so at number 5, I have got the album The Beatles from 1968, which is known as the White Album. This is a double album. It was recorded after their trip to India. It opens up with Back in the USSR, which is a play on Back in the USA by Chuck Berry, and it also has reference to the Beach Boys. And so this is an ironic commentary, and I think the sort of rock and roll pop music that went before. There's a little bit of filler on here. I think Rocky Raccoon I could have done without. There's also the song Julia by Lennon, which is very beautiful and moving song about his mother. I'm here trying to do a ranking. I'm going through these albums. I've done this a million times before. This has never happened before, and it happened twice on this ranking. So I'm going through this album. This track comes on. I'm listening to it. I burst into tears. That is the power of the Beatles. Yep. Side 3 is heavy, especially Your Blues. They sound like Hendrix. They sound like Cream. There's just too much brilliance on this album. Revolution number 9 is perhaps the biggest selling avant-garde music concrete track in history. It's one of those moments where rock music shows what a powerful force it is. I think the other would be a Star Spangled Banner by Hendrix, where what is avant-garde, free noise, jazz, whatever avant-garde suddenly hits the mainstream. At the same time, Hey Jude was recorded, but it wasn't released on this album. It came out as a single. If we got rid of Rocky Raccoon and put Hey Jude on, this could well be vying for number 1. But it's what it's up against. It's nothing about this album. So I'm going to move on to number 4. So at number 4, I have the album that in terms of influence important, I have championed many a time here above things like Sgt. Pepper, and it is Revolver. Revolver to me has always been an incredibly groundbreaking album where their desire to use the studio as an instrument reaches its peak. And it sounds strange when you put it on. It sounds strange. You know no one's playing at the same time. It's got that thing where everything's divided up across the stereo spectrum. It's all very... it's like a collage almost, the way it sounds. At this point, it's worth noting that George Martin brought in a new 19-year-old kid to help called Jeff Emerick. And I think that this is part of the reason. His youthful experimentalism, I think, helped push this album to where it is. You can hear this band is splitting and you're getting tracks that are entirely made by George Harrison or entirely made by Paul McCartney. Now, at the end of this album is Tomorrow Never Knows. And for me, Tomorrow Never Knows.
DJs, mixing doesn't have to be a grind. DJ Studio brings the fun back to your...
It could well be the greatest rock song ever made. It's just so groundbreaking. It's like so well thought out, so way out, so heavy, so trippy. what can you say about Tomorrow Never Knows? I need to do a whole video on Tomorrow Never Knows. So we're moving on. We need into the top 3 now. So at number 3, we have Sergeant Pepper. Now, when I did this, I think Sergeant Pepper, because it got a reputation of being the greatest album ever made. I can remember the 20th anniversary of it in 1987. It was all over the TV. And back then in the 1980s, this was the greatest album ever made. And then, of course, everyone has to come in and go, well, I don't think it is. I think maybe Abbey Road or the White Album is great. And what about Revolver? And there's some weak songs in the middle. We all do. I do this. It's just sort of like being iconoclastic. So I came in and thought, Sergeant Pepper, that won't stand up against things like Revolver. And I put it on, and it just hit me, the genius. This is a game changer. This is something else. And I think it's because the whole album is based upon a conceit. This is a band that is now the biggest band in the world, and they withdraw from playing live. So they're banned, but they're not a band. And if you're not playing live, what a brilliant idea to create another band and have them play live and have the conceit that this album is like this weird concert that you've gone to, but it's a concert by this archaic band that exists outside of the realm of rock and roll, that are able to do whatever they want. This is the device. Once you've got this other character, it's like if you invented a character for yourself. You want to try this. If you went into a place you didn't know, and you pretended you were French, and you walked in, hello, I would like a drink, please. Oh, yes, I would like some of the red wine, As soon as you start to do that, you are a different person. And the Beatles, being the biggest band in the world, pull on this sort of fake mask of Sergeant Pepper. Sergeant Pepper book ends the album. We've got it at the beginning and we've got it at the end. It's this idea of a performance within a performance, and then you get some of the most mind-bending prog ever recorded. A Day in the Life. Now, A Day in the Life is based upon a guy called Tara Brown, who was the son of a millionaire who was about to inherit millions and millions, and he was friends with the Beatles, and he went out for a drive with his girlfriend, and I think he drove into a lorry, and the opening of that is them dealing with that death. So after all this, we have a song about death. It might say Day in the Life, but it is a song about death, and I think it's a song about the moment of death. If you listen to the lyrics at the beginning, it is a straight description of what happened to Tara Brown when he went and hit, when his being hit the slam into the side of a lorry, and he was killed outright, and the effect that that's going to have. And it's almost like parallels the idea of what happens in that moment. It's, that thing, your life flashes before you. James Joyce, a lifetime contained in one single day. All these things that are now pulled in. This is the highest that rock and roll has ever been as an art form for me. So that's the album I've got at number 3. One of the greatest albums ever made. And it still stands up to me. It's absolutely incredible. Anyone says it's got some filler, where's the filler there? It's incredible. At number 2, I have, as you've guessed, Magical Mystery Tour. Sgt. Pepper comes out, they're the biggest band in the world, and then they flop. The Beatles make their first mistake, which is this weird, psychedelic, trippy Christmas TV special that they've made, which takes this 1960s pretense of getting on the magic bus, that sort of Ken Kesey's bus where you get on it, take acid and go off a trip. But they take that idea and they allow it to a very English thing, something that was captured so well in the film Carry On at Your Convenience, which is an English trope, which is the sort of working class going on a day trip to the seaside, and they put all that together and create this incredible film that I think is their finest moment. I like that. And I've done a whole video on this, and I'll put the link in now. But when the TV show came out, it was in black and white on a tiny little screen, and nobody quite knew what was going on. So this has been seen as a bit of a failure. An album didn't come out. They decided to release these tracks as different EPs, so it wasn't released properly. It's now been all pulled together, and it's now a CD called Magical Mystery Tour. And looking back on it now, for me, this is definitive Beatles. When I did this list, this was at number 1 all the way. This was going to be at number 1 all the way. How could it not be? when you've got Magical Mystery Tour, Fall on the Hill, I Am the Walrus, Hello Goodbye, Strawberry Fields, Penny Lane, and All You Need Is Love. This is probably the most definitive Beatles. If you only want to have one Beatles album, it is Magical Mystery Tour. And Strawberry Fields Forever, what they pull off on that is what the Beatles achieved musically. It's all in that, everything. I don't know what much I can say. It's thought to be unfocused. But I think the Beatles always seemed to move forward when they became filmic. All right? And when they become filmic, that's when the magic happens. Right, so we are now at number 1, which is, of course, Abbey Road.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so the thing that's interesting about Abbey Road is they really are in a good way. The band's, I think they start this album out with one of them leaving. In my notes, what have I put here? The album sees the Beatles come together. You see what I did there? And bask in the music form that they have created. This is the album, I feel like, that where they are, in a way, no longer pushing the envelope. The envelope has been pushed, and they've gone, seen all these things that we have invented. We can do this with this. That's what Abbey Road seems like to me. But in the end, we're seeing a split with the band, and Lennon is now moving away. Paul McCartney is off making tracks on his own, like Fall on a Hill. Fall on a Hill is a solo track. It's not a Beatles track. But it's a work of genius. But there's... And also, we see the band coming together as a band. We suddenly hear guitar, bass, and drums. We hear less of the studio experimentation. I Want You, which is a track on here, is a prog masterpiece. Abbey Road is a progressive rock album, and I Want You is a prog masterpiece. And basically, that's them going, in the 90s, there'll be this really cool band called Radiohead, and they'll sound like this. It's like that type of thing. We'll just do it like 30 years before. When I listen to I Want You, I've written down here, so I'm sat there listening with the headphones, and I'm going, and I've written, this is the greatest band of all time. That's what I've written. There's incredible production throughout. We've got complex songs like Here Comes the Sun, which are so catchy. When I was doing this ranking, that was on in the local shop, and I was all there. Everyone's sitting there, walking around listening to this, and it's so sophisticated. There's Because, another sublime song, a song of hope. And then the medley. I haven't written much about this. I got so taken up by the medley. Because believe it or not, I've never sat and listened to Abbey Road all the way through, which is why it didn't impinge on me. I've listened to it in bits and bobs, but I've never sit down. And that medley in the end, right? And you know what they're trying to do. Now, Lennon poo-pooed this. It's always just bits of ideas. It was bits of ideas. And that is what progressive rock is. Yes had a whole career on bits of ideas cleverly arranged. This is an absolute masterpiece. I didn't want to put it at number 1. I didn't want this one at number 1. And I'm sat there listening to it, because everyone says this is the best one, but it's not, is it? Then you put it on, and they're just so in control, and they just so know what they're doing. So that is my ranking of the Beatles.
Well done. I enjoyed that.
Need Windows on your MacBook Neo? Parallels Desktop Pro lets you run Windows and Mac OS together. Excel, Access, Power BI, and more right on your Mac. Get Parallels Desktop Pro today.
I don't think so. Thank you. Right, that's the end. I hope you didn't mind me doing that. Didn't want to spoil anyone's video, but just thought it would be nice to interact with somebody's. So, see ya.